Hello scholars, welcome to Dakshina classroom. In the last lecture, we talked about nuclear force. Nuclear force is the force which keeps nucleons together even against electrostatic repulsion between protons and protons. We also talked about binding energy. Binding energy is the energy released when you make a new nucleus from its constituent parts. We talked about mass defect. Mass defect is the difference between actual mass and the total mass of its constituent particles. And we also saw that how we can judge how well bound a nucleus is. In other words, we talked about how we can judge how stable a nucleus is. Now we talked about that stability is a relative term. Some nuclei are more stable than other. You cannot completely say that this is unstable, that is stable. And we also took a look at that if a nucleus is unstable or if a nucleus is relatively unstable, it will try to change itself. So in today's lecture, we are going to take a deeper look into that how an unstable or a relatively unstable nucleus changes itself into a more stable nucleus. So let us first take a look at what are the topics which we will be covering in today's lecture. So the first topic which we will talk about is radioactivity. What is radioactivity? Under this second topic which we will cover is alpha decay. Then will come beta decay. We will see there are two kinds of beta decays. We will talk about them. Fourth is your gamma decay. And after we have seen alpha, beta, gamma decay, we will talk about law of radioactive decay. So, this chapter or this lecture will be dedicated to understand that how, by what process a less unstable nucleus can change itself to become a more stable nucleus. So first, let us talk about what is radioactivity. So in the last lecture, we talked about that some nuclei are less stable than other nuclei. So what actually happens is that a less stable nuclei or nucleus tries to change its composition in order to become a more stable nuclei. Now there are certain processes through which a nucleus can change its composition. Those processes through which a nucleus changes its composition in order to become more stable nuclei, that process, those processes are called radioactivity. So what is radioactivity? In simple word, radioactivity is the process through which a less stable nucleus tries to change its composition. Composition means how many number of protons and neutrons it is made up of. Tries to change its composition. Why it will change its composition? In order to become more stable. In order to become more stable. So that's what you call radioactivity. Now, there are mainly three kinds of processes through which a nucleus changes itself to become more stable. Number one is your alpha decay. Now what is alpha decay? In case of an alpha decay, you have already studied some little bit about alpha particles in Rutherford's gold-foiled experiment. What happens in an alpha decay? A helium ion is ejected. A helium atom is ejected. So your alpha decay, simply it is nothing but emission of helium atom from the nucleus. So that is your alpha decay. Second is your beta decay. We will talk about these decays in detail. Now there are two kinds of beta decays. One is beta positive decay, one is beta minus decay. In a little while we will talk about those in detail. Now third is your gamma decay. What is gamma decay? Gamma decay is nothing but emission of very high energy photons. The photons which are emitted in gamma decay are very high energy. We will take a look at why does that happens. So these are the three kinds of decays which we will study under radioactivity. Now let's talk about what is an alpha decay. Now in case of an alpha decay, a nucleus which wants to become more stable emits an alpha particle, and by doing so it changes its binding energy per nucleon. And if you remember from the last lecture, higher the binding energy per nucleon, the more stable a nucleus will be. So what actually happens in an alpha decay? In alpha decay, let us say we have an element X with atomic number Z and mass number A. And this element, the nucleus of this element wants to become more stable. So what it will do? It will emit an alpha particle. Atomic number 2, mass number 4. And if an alpha particle is emitted, what will be left? Which element will be left? Now see, here number of protons is Z. Here number of protons in alpha particle is 2. Then how many protons are left here? Z minus 2 protons are left. Here number of nucleons is A. Number of nucleons 4. How many nucleons are left? A minus 4 nucleons are left. So in this way, this one original nuclei, it underwent an alpha decay, emitted an alpha particle, and a new nucleus was formed. So this original nucleus which underwent an alpha decay, this is called your parent nucleus. Parent nucleus. The original nucleus which underwent an alpha particle decay, that is called parent nucleus. And the resultant, a new nucleus is formed. So this new nucleus, it is called daughter nucleus. So that way. So why actually an alpha decay takes place? An alpha decay takes place because this parent nucleus wanted to become more stable. And what is the parameter, very convenient parameter of measuring whether a daughter nucleus is more stable or not? So the parameter is to find the binding energy per nucleon. Now let us take an example. Now let us take an example of uranium-238. Now uranium-238 atomic number 92. So this will try to become more stable. So binding energy per nucleon for uranium-238 is 7.57 mega electron volt. This is binding energy per nucleon for uranium-238. Now it will undergo an alpha decay. So an alpha particle here plus. Now what should be the atomic number of the daughter nucleus? Here it is 92 protons, here it is 2 protons, 92 minus 2 which is 90. So 90. And what should be mass number? 238 minus 4, that is 234. So that is your thorium. So a uranium-238 decays through alpha decay into one alpha particle and a new thorium nucleus is formed. Now the purpose of alpha decay is for nucleus to become more stable. Now if you can guess, thorium should have binding energy per nucleon more than uranium-238. So as it happens that for thorium-234, the binding energy per nucleon is 7.6 mega electron volt. So if you see, binding energy per nucleon for thorium is slightly greater than binding energy per nucleon for uranium. So in this case, what will happen? So the thorium nucleus is slightly more stable than the uranium-238 nucleus. Now one more aspect of alpha decay is that when alpha decay happens, energy is released. Remember, alpha decay is an spontaneous process, and as you have studied in chemistry also, that if a reaction or if a process is spontaneous, it should release energy. Any spontaneous process will release energy. So alpha decay is happening spontaneously, meaning during the alpha decay energy will be released. Now if you want to know how much energy is released, that is what is called Q value of a nuclear reaction or a decay. Now what is Q value? Q value is nothing but amount of energy released. Q value, energy released. Now how do I calculate how much energy will be released? Now see, we have studied in the last lecture something called mass defect. What is mass defect? That product's mass will be slightly less than the parent's mass. Meaning, if I add the mass of helium plus daughter nuclei, that should be less than the total mass of your parent nucleus, and that will be my mass defect. And according to Einstein, mass is in another form of energy. So I can convert that mass defect into energy. Where did that mass go? That mass will be converted into energy, and that energy will be released during the process. So how much energy will be released? So Q will be equal to mass defect delta M multiplied by C square. That will be your Q value. Q is the energy released. And what is your mass defect? Now if you remember, mass defect is what? Difference between mass of parent nucleus and what is the product after that? That is daughter nucleus plus an alpha particle. So I can write it as mass of X. What is mass of X? Parent nucleus mass, which should be greater than these two masses combined. So mx minus m alpha, mass of alpha particle, minus my, mass of daughter nucleus. That is your mass defect. And if I multiply by mass defect with C square, that will give me energy released during an alpha decay. So this should be energy released. Now remember, if alpha decay has to be an spontaneous process, then energy must be released. And if energy is released, this Q value must be positive. Meaning, the combined mass of daughter nucleus plus this alpha particle must be less than your parent nucleus. If these two combined are greater than parent nucleus, then this process will not be spontaneous. Then this process will not happen on its own. Then you will find that energy, instead of decreasing, instead of binding energy per nucleon increasing, your binding energy per nucleon decreases. So we want a spontaneous process. So for a spontaneous process, value of Q must be positive. So you can write that here. For spontaneous decay, value of q must be positive. If value of q is not positive, if value of q is coming out to be negative, then your process will not be spontaneous. Then that process will not take place only. Now, in order to elaborate the point that what should be the q value of an spontaneous alpha decay, let us try to solve a question. So, find if this reaction is possible or not. Now, you should pause and try to find by yourself. Now, what I will try to do is, I will try to find the mass defect. Now, if a reaction is spontaneous, then final mass must be less than the initial mass. Then only energy will be liberated or released. So, if the final mass is less, then the reaction will take place. If the final mass is more, then the reaction will not take place. So, what is the final mass here? So, final mass total will be equal to how much? This plus, so 205.9745 plus 10 times mass of proton. Everything is in atomic mass unit. So 10 times 1.00727 plus 20 times mass of neutron. 20 times 1.00866. Now, when you solve this, you will get approximately 236.2204 atomic mass unit. Now, if you see, initial mass is 236.0456 and final is this much. So, here initial mass is less than final mass. Then instead of decreasing mass, mass is increased. Then this reaction cannot be spontaneous. Why this reaction cannot be spontaneous? See, mass is nothing but another form of energy. And if final mass is more, meaning final energy is more. Where did that energy came from? From where? Who supplied that energy? There is no source. So we are not supplying any energy. So this reaction is not possible. Now let's talk about what is a beta decay. Now there are two kinds of beta decays. So first let's take a look at beta minus decay. We will see why it is called beta minus decay. So what happens in a beta minus decay is, there is a parent nucleus X, Z, A. Atomic number Z, mass number A. Now what will happen is, this parent nucleus will change itself into a daughter nucleus whose atomic number will be greater by 1. If the atomic number of parent nucleus was Z, then daughter nucleus will be Z plus 1. While the mass number will remain same. And what will happen in extra addition to that? An electron will be ejected from the nucleus. Plus an antineutrino will be ejected. Now what is an antineutrino? Antineutrino is kind of subatomic particle which has zero mass, that is rest mass, and it has no charge. More than this, you need not worry about what is antineutrino. This much you should know. Now, so what happens in a beta minus decay? In a beta minus decay, the atomic number increases by 1 while mass number remains same. An electron is emitted and an antineutron is emitted. So you can write atomic number increases by 1. While mass number remains same. Now, when we know what is your beta minus decay, let us take a look at how it actually happens. Now see, what is happening inside? There are Z number of protons and A minus Z number of neutrons. So what is in this case? Z plus 1 number of protons and A minus Z minus 1 number of neutrons. Meaning, in a beta minus decay, number of protons is increased by 1 while number of neutrons is decreased by 1. Now what is happening? This is not the case that one neutron was thrown out and one proton was taken in. No. What actually happens in a beta minus decay is a neutron changes itself. A neutron changes itself into a proton plus an electron and an anti-neutron. So what actually happens here? There is a neutron inside the nucleus. It will change itself into what? Into a proton. Proton has a positive charge plus an electron, which is a negative charge, plus an anti-neutrino. This is the actual process which takes place inside the nucleus, and by the result you find this, that number of protons increases by 1 while number of neutron decreases by 1. Now in this process, if you observe, on the left side total charge is 0, on the right side also total charge is 0. So you can write charge is conserved. Now remember, charge should be conserved. Charge particles may be created or destroyed. Charge should be conserved. Here also 0 charge, here also 0 charge. But in this side, no charge particles. Here, 2 charge particles. So charge particles may be created or destroyed, but charge should be conserved. So charge is conserved. So this is your beta minus decay. Now let us take an example. Let us take an example of beta minus decay. So let us take phosphorus. Now phosphorus, your atomic number is 15. We are taking a particular isotope with mass number 32. Now this phosphorus changes into sulfur. For sulfur, atomic number 16, mass number 32, plus an electron is emitted, plus an anti-neutron is emitted. Now this is an example of beta minus decay. Now if you talk about binding energy per nucleon, so for phosphorus 32 it is 8.4641 mega electron volt. And if why a decay takes place, why a beta minus decay takes place? A beta minus decay is taking place to increase the stability of nucleus. Okay, so final energy should be, final binding energy per nucleon should be more than initial. So you will find that binding energy for sulfur is 8.4961. Now there might be some variations depending upon the source, but that is your binding energy per nucleon for sulfur. Now since if you see here it is binding energy per nucleon of phosphorus. Now here it is binding energy per nucleon for sulfur. As you can see, it is mega electron volt. Binding energy per nucleon of sulfur is more than phosphorus. So by undergoing a beta minus decay, phosphorus nucleus was able to change itself into a sulfur nucleus, and an electron was ejected and anti-neutron was ejected, and as you can see, binding energy per nucleon has increased, and more binding energy per nucleons means more stable nuclei. So in this way a beta minus decay takes place. Now let's see what happens in a beta positive decay. Now in case of a beta positive decay, let's take an example XZA. X element, Z atomic number, a mass number. In case of a beta decay, beta positive decay, beta minus decay we have already seen. In case of a beta positive decay, the atomic number of daughter nucleus is decreased by 1. So here y will be z minus 1, while the mass number will remain same. And what happens? What is emitted? A positron is emitted. Now what is a positron? A positron is another particle which has mass same as electron. Magnitude of charge is also same, just opposite sign. On an electron it is negative charge, on a positron it is positive charge. Everything else is same. So that is, a positron is emitted plus a neutrino is emitted. What is a neutrino? Same thing. Your zero mass, no charge. There is one important difference, that is spin quantum number, that you need not worry about right now. Now, so this is what you have in a beta plus decay, that there is a parent nucleus. For daughter nucleus, atomic number decreases by 1, a positron is emitted and neutrino is emitted. So first thing you will write, in a beta positive decay, atomic number decreases by 1. Atomic number or number of protons, same thing. Atomic number decreases by 1, while mass number remains same. Mass number remains same. So mass number here also A, here also A. Atomic number decreases by 1. Now how this actually takes place? Now how atomic number is decreased by 1? Now what happens inside the nucleus is, remember, in case of a beta minus decay, a neutron was changing into proton. Now what is happening here? Proton number is decreased and neutron number will be increased by 1. So what should be happening? A proton should be converting itself into a neutron. So what actually happens in a beta plus decay is, a proton changes itself into a neutron plus a positron plus a neutrino. So see, charge is conserved. Here also one positive charge, here also one positive charge. So you can write charge is conserved. Now, so let us take an example. So let's say sodium 1122. Now sodium 1122 changes in 2. Now atomic number should decrease. So neon, atomic number 10, 22 plus a positron plus a neutrino. Now binding energy per nucleon for sodium 1122 will be 7.9157 mega electron volt. This is the binding energy per nucleon for sodium 22. Now if this reaction has to be spontaneous, or if this reaction will only takes place when final product is more stable, right? So for neon it is, not nitrogen. For neon, binding energy per nucleon should be more, and as it happens that for neon binding energy per nucleon is 8.0322 mega electron volts. So as you can see, binding energy per nucleon has increased from initial 7.9157 to final 8.0322, meaning here the product, which is your neon nucleus, is more stable than the reactant or constituent, which was your sodium nucleus, which is 7.9157 mega electron volt. So in this way, by emitting a positron or undergoing a beta plus decay, a sodium was able to increase its stability. But after increasing stability, sodium is no longer sodium. Sodium changes itself into a neon nucleus. Now there is one very important point related to your beta decay. Sometimes it is also asked in the examination. That is what, if you remember, in case of a beta minus decay, a neutron was changing itself into a proton plus an electron plus an antineutrino. Now what if I have a free neutron? Free neutron means that neutron is not part of the nucleus. Remember, beta minus decay takes place inside the nucleus. And if I have a free neutron, meaning it is free from any nucleus, it is not any nucleus part. So that free neutron, if it wants to change itself into a proton plus an electron plus an antineutrino, so is this reaction possible? Now if you remember, mass of a neutron is slightly greater than mass of a proton. And as we have seen, since final mass is less than the original mass, some mass is missing. Where will that mass go? That mass will be released in the form of energy. And since energy is released, we can say that this process is possible. So even a free neutron can convert itself into a proton plus an electron plus an antineutrino. So this process is possible. So what you will say? First, a free neutron can convert or can decay into a proton, an electron, and an antineutrino. Now let us examine the same thing for a proton. Now what if we have a free proton? Free proton means a proton which is not part of any nucleus. Now, so what was happening in case of a beta positive decay? In case of a beta positive decay, a proton was changing itself into a neutron plus a positron plus a neutrino. But remember that beta positive decay was happening inside another nucleus, for example uranium or sodium. So if we have a free proton means that is not part of any nucleus. So we have seen proton changes itself into neutron plus a positron plus a neutrino. Now is this reaction possible? Is this reaction possible? Remember, proton's mass is less than neutron's mass. So here final mass is more, initial mass is less. Where did that mass came from? What is the source of that mass? Remember, neutron is 1.00866 atomic mass unit. And while proton is 1.00727 atomic mass unit. So final mass is more than initial mass. Where did that mass come from? There is no source. This is a free proton. Free protons means it is free. There is nobody supplying anything. So from where did that mass will come? There is no source. Meaning if you have a free proton, then that free proton cannot change itself into a neutron plus a positron. So what you will write? A free proton, sometimes this is asked in the examination, a free proton cannot decay into a neutron, a positron, and a neutrino. So while a free neutron can change itself into a proton plus electron plus antineutrino, a free proton cannot change itself into a neutron plus positron plus neutrino. So this is sometimes asked. So what you can say? You can remember as a rule that if a equation or decay, if a decay has to be spontaneous without any external help, then what should be the rule of thumb? That final mass should be less than the initial mass. Final mass should be less, then only energy will be released. If final mass is more than initial mass, then that process is not possible. That process is not possible on its own. If you supply too much energy from outside, then may be possible, but on its own it cannot happen. Now let's talk about what is your gamma decay. Now if you remember, in case of alpha decay or beta plus or minus decay, a lot of energy was released. Now what happens to that energy? That energy, some part of that energy goes into the increasing kinetic energy of daughter nucleus and your helium, your either helium ion or beta minus particle or beta positive particle. So let us take an example, that cobalt 27. Now cobalt 27 has atomic mass 27, atomic number 27 and mass number 60. Now a cobalt 27 undergoes a beta minus decay to change itself into nickel. So beta minus decay means atomic number will be increased 28 and mass number remains same 60, plus an electron which is beta minus particle plus an antineutrino. So a lot of energy is released in this process. Now some amount of that energy goes into increasing the kinetic energy of these particles, these products. Now what happens is, as in the case of electrons revolving around the nucleus, if you remember, there are multiple orbits, there are multiple energy levels. There is a ground level, there is a first excited state, there is a second excited state, there is a third excited state, and so on. Same is the case with nucleus. A nucleus can also have multiple excitation states or multiple energy levels. So what happens is, when a daughter nucleus is created, it is created in a high energy level. After the creation, its energy level is very high. Now what happens in the case of an electron if it is in a high energy level? It tries to jump into a lower energy level and emits a photon. Now the difference is, in case of an electron jumping into its levels, energy is very small, but in case of nucleus, energy levels are very large, of the order of mega electron volt. So what happens is, this nickel 2860, this will be created in a high energy state. After just emitting a beta minus particle, this nickel will have a lot of energy. Nucleus will be in very high energy level. So what will it will do? It will try to radiate some of that energy. So after the radiation, nickel will still be nickel, but it will emit a gamma particle. Or what it will emit? It will emit a very high energy photon. So what is happening in a gamma decay? Remember, until now, whether we were talking about alpha decay or beta minus decay or beta plus decay, the parent nucleus and the daughter nucleus, they were two different elements. Here you see beta minus decay, it is different element, it is different element. But in case of a gamma decay, there is no change in whether the atomic number or mass number, no change. The only thing that happens in a gamma decay is the nucleus comes down from a high energy state to a low energy state. So this nucleus will be high energy state, or what you call excited nucleus, and this will be low energy. Now remember, we are not talking about energy of the electron, we are talking about energy state of the nucleus itself, not the electrons revolving around the nucleus. So this high energy photon will be emitted. Now let's try to understand this, how it actually happens. So a cobalt is there, 2760. Now this cobalt has an energy state. It will go down by emitting a beta minus particle. Your nickel will be formed, 2860. Now nickel will be formed in a high energy state. So it will try to go down to the ground level. So 0 mega electron volt, 1.33 mega electron volt, 1.17 or 2.5 mega electron volt. So nickel is already created with this much excess energy and it has to go down to this level. So what it can do? It can either directly jump to the ground state, or it can jump first to the first excited state, then again jump to the ground state. So what will happen? There are three kinds of photons emission are possible. Number one, how much energy photon is possible? From 2.5 mega electron volt to 0 mega electron volt. So 2.5 mega electron volt photon energy is possible. Second, from here to here. So 2.5 minus 1.33. So 1.17 mega electron volt. And from here to 0. So third is possible is 1.33 mega electron volt. So these three kinds of photons are possible when a nickel goes from high energy state, which is second excited state, to the low energy, which is ground state. So what is the need of a gamma decay? Need of a gamma decay is to decrease the energy of the nucleus from high energy level to the low energy level. And why was the nucleus in the high energy level in the first place? Nucleus was in the high energy level because that after an alpha decay or beta minus decay or beta plus decay, there is a lot of energy left and the nucleus is created in an excited state. So you can say that a gamma decay always follows alpha decay or beta decay. Gamma decay does not occur independently. Gamma decay happens after the alpha decay or beta decay. So you can write as a point that an alpha decay or beta decay is usually followed by gamma decay. So in a gamma decay, a very high energy photon is emitted. So if a lot of these photons are emitted, so that ray will be called your gamma ray. Now see, as I am saying, very high energy photon. How high? Now here there are three energies of photons. Now what you should do is, you should try to calculate the wavelengths of these photons or the frequencies of these photons and try to place those photons on the spectrum, that in which area will they lie, whether they will lie in infrared or visible range or X-ray or radio wave or ultraviolet wave, in which region they will lie. you should try to find their wavelength or frequency and try to find out. So until now we have seen that how a nucleus tries to become more stable by undergoing alpha, beta or gamma decay. There are two kinds of beta decays, beta minus, beta plus. Now, so if we have one nucleus, let us say I have one nucleus of uranium-238. So can we predict that this nucleus will decay after how much time? There is no way of telling that one particular nucleus will decay in what time. That you cannot predict. But what you can predict is that from a given sample of nucleus, meaning I have a sample of uranium-238 and let's say there are 10,000 nucleus in that sample, then I can predict that in a given time, let us say 2 minutes, so I can predict how many nucleus will decay in that 2 minutes. So I cannot predict which nucleus will decay, but I can predict out of the given sample how many will decay in a given amount of time. Now how we can do that? Let's take a look. So let us say at time t we have number of nucleus in the sample is n. So let us say n is the number of nuclei present in the sample at time t. Now, so these n number of nuclei will undergo decay. I cannot predict which one of them will decay. Now, but I can predict that how many will decay. So as the number of nuclei decays, what will happen to the total number of nuclei? The total number of nuclei will come down. It will decrease. So what is the rate of change of number of nuclei? See, I can write dN by dt. What is dN by dt? dN by dt is rate of change of number of nuclei. Now it is found that dN by dt, rate of change of number of nuclei, that is proportional to n. That is proportional to total number of nuclei. Meaning, more the number of nuclei present, more number of nuclei will decay, and so more will be rate of change. Now there is one crucial thing left, that is what? See, what is dN by dt? dN by dt is rate of change of total number of nuclei. Now since some of them are decaying, what will happen to total number of nuclei? It is decreasing. And since this is decreasing, since n is decreasing, this dN by dt is a negative value. And since dN by dt is a negative value, here also I have to put a minus sign. So like this. So in order to remove the proportionality sign, I can write dN by dt equals minus of lambda times n, where lambda is your decay constant. Lambda is called decay constant. In some books it is also written as disintegration constant, but decay constant is fine. Now lambda is property of what? Lambda is decay constant, depends upon what? Lambda depends upon your element. So radioactive element. Meaning, if you have thorium, then lambda will be different. If you have uranium, then lambda will be different. If you have radium, then lambda will be different. So this decay constant will be different for different nuclei. Now, let's see, we write this as dN by dt equals minus of lambda times n. What this tells us is that at what rate total number of nuclei present in a given sample is decreasing, is changing, it is coming down. Because obviously if some of them have decayed, then obviously total number will decrease. For example, there were 10 number of uranium. Out of those 10, 2 of them converted into thorium. Then how many uranium are left? 8 uranium are left. So obviously total number of nuclei for uranium has come down, has decreased. That is why minus sign here. Now can I write it like this? dn by n, took n here denominator, is equal to minus lambda dt. Can I write it like this? Now what I can do is I can integrate this from where to where. Let us say initially there were n naught number of nucleus and finally there are n number of nucleus. So initially n naught, finally n. What time I can take? Let us say initial time t naught and final time t. Then if I integrate this, what I will get? dn by n will be ln n. Limit, put the limits from where to where? From n naught to n. Initial number of nuclei n naught, final number of nuclei n. This will be equal to how much? Minus of lambda times lambda dt will be t, or t you put limits from t naught to t. Now I can also write this as ln n by n naught equals minus of lambda times t minus t naught. Now if you pay attention here, this can also be written as n by n naught equals, here it will be e to the power minus lambda times t minus t naught, like this. Now what I can do is, here I can write this as n equals n naught e to the power minus lambda t minus t naught, where n naught is the number of nuclei at t naught. T is the time after, lambda is the decay constant, n is the final number of nuclei. Now if I take initial time to be 0, meaning t naught, if I write t naught as 0, meaning n naught is the number of nuclei at t equals 0, then this equation can also be written as n equals n naught e to the power minus lambda times t. Now what does this equation is telling me? Now see, what is n? N is the number of nuclei present at time t. What is n naught? N naught is number of nuclei at time 0 second, in the beginning. What is lambda? Lambda is your decay constant. So what this equation does is, it tells you that if at t equals 0 you had n number of nuclei, then after t time how many nuclei will be left? That is the use of this equation. N equals to n naught e to the power minus lambda times t. Then you can go through this derivation, but this final equation which we have derived, this is must for you to remember. You must remember this equation, n is equal to n naught e to the power minus lambda times t. Now we have seen that how we can predict that how many nuclei will be left after time t. So what was the equation? The equation was n equals n naught e to the power minus lambda times t. Now, if I want to know that how many nuclei will decay in a given amount of time, then see what I can do. If I differentiate this dn by dt, it will give me what? It will give me rate of change of number of nuclei, meaning at what rate total number of nuclei is decreasing. So that will be nothing but minus of total number of nuclei decay. For example, let us take an example that there are 10 nuclei and I say that after 1 second 8 nuclei are left, then you will say, sir, dn by dt rate of change will be minus 2. But if I ask you at what rate they are decaying, then you can say rate of decay will be 2 nuclei decaying per second, meaning plus 2. So can I write rate of decay is nothing but minus of dn by dt minus of rate of change of total number of nuclei. So rate of decay, meaning what number of nuclei will decay per second, that can be written as minus of rate of change of total number of nuclei. So minus dn by dt is written as R, where R is your activity of the sample. Now, so here R equals minus of dn by dt. In place of n, you can write this. So minus of d times n naught e to the power minus lambda times t divided by your dt, like this. If you differentiate this, you will get what? R equals n naught is the constant, e to the power minus lambda t, minus lambda will be outside, so we will get lambda times n naught e to the power minus lambda t. Now this can also be written as R equals lambda times n naught e to the power minus lambda t. Now what is this value? See, what is this value? This is nothing but n. So you can write R equals lambda times n, where R is activity of a sample. For a given sample, how many nuclei will decay per unit of time. So activity of the sample depends upon two things. Number one, decay constant. If you have different elements, their decay constant will be different, and so their activity will be different. And second thing, it depends upon number of nuclei present. If you have two samples of same element, but one has 100 nuclei, other has 1000 nuclei, then for both of them activity will be different. So number of nuclei present. So R equals lambda times n naught. You can also write this as in one another form. That is what? See here. R equals lambda n naught e to the power minus lambda t. I can also write this as like that. And what is lambda times n naught? Here, pay attention. If I write n naught is what? Number of nuclei at the beginning, in the beginning at t equals 0. So lambda times n naught is nothing but activity of this sample at t equals 0. So I can also write this equation as R equals R naught e to the power minus lambda times t. So that can also be written as like that, where r naught is activity of sample at t equals 0. So this way you can also tell the activity of the sample. So this is r equals lambda n, r equals r naught e to the power minus lambda t. Now remember, what is activity? Activity is number of nuclei decaying per unit time. Now what is SI unit of activity? SI unit of activity is becquerel. So SI unit of activity is becquerel. Now becquerel is written in the honor of Henry Becquerel. Becquerel was the scientist who actually discovered radioactivity. So one becquerel in short it is written as BQ. So 1 becquerel is 1 decay per second. What is the meaning? Let us say from a given sample 1 nuclei decays per second. Then the activity of the sample will be written as 1 becquerel. So 1 becquerel, that is SI unit, is 1 decay per second. That is the activity. Now let us try to solve a question. What is the question given here? Now before I solve this, you should pause the video and try to solve it yourself. Now activity for a given sample, there is a sample of radioactive material, and for that activity is given as 4750 becquerel. Meaning what? Ki out of the given sample per second 4750 decays occurs. Meaning out of the given number of nuclei, this many nuclei were decaying per second. Now as we know, the number of nuclei decaying is directly proportional to total number of nuclei present, and as soon as nuclei start decaying, total number will come down, and since total number comes down, decay rate will also come down. So it becomes 27 becquerel after 5 seconds, meaning at t equals 0, this many nuclei were decaying per second. At t equals 5, this many nuclei decaying per second. Why the number has decreased? Because activity is directly proportional to total number of nuclei present, and since nuclei are decaying, total number of nuclei present will also go down, and since total number of nuclei decreases, activity also decreases over a period of time. So initially t equals 0, 4750, at t equal to 5, 2700. Find decay constant of the element. We have to find that decay constant for that particular element. Now, what is activity? R equals lambda times n. That is the equation. Now, but in this equation, there is no use of time. Then how do we write? We will use the other equation. Which equation? R equals R naught e to the power minus lambda t. We have this equation as well, where R is the activity at time t, R naught is the activity at t equals 0, lambda is the decay constant, t is the time at which you have activity R. Now, so here I can write R as what? At t equals 5, activity is 27. So 27 becquerel equals R naught at t equals 0, 4750. E to the power minus lambda I don't know, but time I know, which is 5 seconds. So I will write what? 270 divided by 475 is equal to e to the power minus of 5 lambda. Now if I take log on both sides, I will get what? Log of base e, it is 270 divided by 475 equals minus of 5 lambda. Then lambda is what? Lambda is nothing but ln 270 divided by 475 whole divided by minus of 5. And when you solve this, you will find lambda comes out to be 0.113 decay per second. That is your decay constant for your that element, for that particular element. Now remember, decay constant is a property of that particular element. For different elements, decay constant will be different. Now let's talk about something called half-life. Now what is half-life of an element? Let us say in the beginning at t equal to 0, you had 1000 nuclei in your sample. Then half-life is simply that after how much time your sample will be 500 nucleus, meaning total number of nuclei in your given sample becomes half. So half-life is very simple, that how much time it will take for total number of nuclei to become half of the original value. So what is half-life? Time taken for total number of nuclei to become half of its original value or initial value. You can also write initial value, no problem. Now, so how do we calculate this time? Now we know that n equals n naught e to the power minus lambda times t, where n is number of nuclei left after t second, where n naught is number of nuclei at t equals 0 and lambda is the decay constant. So we want to know the half-life, meaning after t time how many nuclei will be left? Half of the initial, and initial is t n naught. So I can write n equals n naught by 2 equals n naught e to the power minus lambda times t. N naught cancel. You will get 2 to the power minus 1. 1 by 2 can also be written as 2 to the power minus 1 equals e to the power minus lambda times t. Now take log on both sides. You will get what? ln 2 power minus 1 equals minus lambda times t. Now 2 power minus 1 minus you can take outside. So minus of ln 2 equals minus of lambda t. So minus minus cancel. So t half will be equal to ln 2 divided by lambda. So what is t half? The time it takes for the number of nuclei in a given sample to become half of its original value or initial value. So t half equals ln 2 divided by lambda. Now if you pay attention, t half only depends on what? Lambda. It does not depend upon how many nuclei you have. Let's take an example. I have two samples of uranium-238. One has 1000 nucleus, other has 100 nucleus at t equals 0. Then let us say I want to know after how much time 1000 will become 500 and 100 will become 50. So time taken in both the cases will be same or different? time taken will be same, because no matter you take 1000 nucleus, 10,000 nucleus, 10 nucleus or million nucleus, the time it will take to become half of the original value does not depend upon the number of nuclei taken. It only depends upon lambda, and lambda is the property of element. So for uranium sample, no matter how many nuclei are there, every time you perform the experiment, the time taken for the number of nuclei, for the number of uranium nuclei present in the sample to become half of the initial value will always remain same, because that is the property of lambda, and lambda is the property of element. So let us solve a question based on half-life. What is the question? Before I solve this, you should try yourself. A sample contains 1 into 10 to the power 15 atoms. So there is a radioactive sample and the number of atoms present is this much. So N equals 1 into 10 to the power 15 and has an activity of 6 into 10 to the power 11 becquerel. What is becquerel? Becquerel is 1 decay per second. So has an activity. So R equals 6 into 10 to the power 11 becquerel decay per second. Decay per second. Find its half-life. Now we know that half-life is nothing but ln2 divided by lambda. Now but we do not know lambda here. But what we know that activity is nothing but lambda times n. This equation you should remember. So what I can write? 6 into 10 to the power 11 equals lambda times 1 into 10 to the power 15. So 10 to the power 15. So from here you will get lambda equals 6 into divided by 10 to the power 15. So 6 into 10 to the power minus 4. So that is your lambda. Now what is half-life? Half-life, T half is nothing but ln2 divided by lambda. What is the value of ln2? 0.693. You can take approximately 0.7. So T half is nothing but 0.7 divided by 6 into 10 to the power minus 4 seconds, which can also be written as 7 by 6 into 10 to the power 3 second. And when you solve this, you will get approximately 19 minutes 15 seconds approximately. So the half-life for that element is 19 minutes 15 seconds. Now remember, half-life is the property of element, not the property of how many nucleons you have. So even if I had, let us say, 10 to the power 30 atoms, then also half-life would be same. Activity will change because activity is the property of total number of nuclei. How many nuclei will decay? That is the property of total number of nuclei. But half-life, that how much time it will take for total nuclei to become half of the initial value, that will depend only on the element. For uranium, it will always be same. For thorium, it will always be that value. Now another very important parameter for radioactive law is mean life or average life. Now what is the meaning of mean life or average life? Before we come to that, let us take a look at a graph. Now we know that n equals n naught e to the power minus lambda times t. Now what does this mean is, n is the number of nuclei left, n naught is the number of nuclei initial, lambda is the decay constant, t is the time taken. Now if I try to plot this graph, Now if I try to plot this graph, T versus N, number of nuclei present versus T, then at T equals 0, you will get N naught. And as the time passes, this will exponentially decrease like this. And at infinity, it will become 0 after infinite time. Now before we come to what is average life, let us take an example. We will take very simple example. Let us say in a sample there are 5 nucleus. Okay. Now let's say out of those 5, one nucleus took 1 second to decay. Then lifespan of that nucleus will be how much? 1 second. Let us take another nucleus took 5 seconds to decay. Then lifespan of that nucleus will be how much? 5 seconds. Let us take another nucleus took 3 seconds to decay. Then lifespan of that nucleus will be how much? 3 seconds. And let us say another nucleus took 2 seconds to decay. So lifespan of that nucleus will be 2 seconds. And let us say the last nucleus took 10 seconds to decay. Then lifespan of that last nucleus will be 10 seconds. And if I add the lifespan of all the 5 nucleus, then I will get what? Sum of lifespans of all those 5 nucleus, that will be how much? 5, 1, 6, 3, 9, 2, 11, 10, 21. Then what is 21 second? Sum of the lifespans of all the nucleus. Now remember, they are taking different times to decay, but 21 second is sum of the lifespan of all the nucleus. Now, how many nucleus were there? There were 5. So if I divide by 5, then I get what? 4.2 second. Then what is this 4.2 second? This 4.2 second is average lifespan of these 5 nucleus sample. So for that particular sample, average lifespan is how much? 4.2 second. Now let us try to implement this concept on this curve. Now this curve represents what? This curve represents at what time how many nuclei are present. Now if I find the area under this curve, so what will be the area under this curve? Area under the curve will be sum of lives of all the nuclei. The area under the curve is sum of lives of all the nuclei. Now remember, some of them will decay very early, some of them will decay more time, some of them will take very long time to decay. Then all of their life sum is the area under this curve. Now how do we find the area under the curve? Integration from 0 to where? To infinite. Integration 0 to infinity. What is n value? N value is n naught e to the power minus lambda t dt. This is your area under the curve. Now when you solve this, you will get what? You will get minus of n naught e to the power minus lambda t divided by lambda, limits from where to where? From 0 to infinity. Then you will get minus of n naught by lambda, limit infinity e to the power minus infinity is 0, e to the power minus 0 is 1. So minus 1. So you get n naught by lambda. So what is n naught by lambda? N naught by lambda is sum of lives of all the elements. So initially there were 100 nuclei. So sum of lives of all those 100 nuclei is n naught divided by lambda, 100 by lambda. Now remember, some of those nuclei will decay very early, some of them will decay after some time, and some of them might take a very long time to decay. But sum of all those lifespan will be how much? N naught by lambda. Now, what will be average life? Average life is nothing but sum of all the lives divided by total number of nuclei present in the beginning. So, T average is nothing but this sum N naught by lambda whole divided by total number of nuclei present in the beginning, which was N naught. So from here I get T average equals 1 by lambda. Now see here, while half life was ln 2 by lambda, T average is 1 by lambda. So you can also write T half equals what? 1 by lambda times ln 2. Can you write like this? Yes. And what is 1 by lambda? 1 by lambda is nothing but T average. So you can write T half equals T average times ln 2. That equation might be useful sometime. Then if you want, you can remember that relation. Here it is T average. Now remember, either it is T half or T average. Both are the property of lambda, and lambda depends upon element. So it does not matter whether you take 100 nucleus or 1000 nucleus or 10 nucleus or 10 million nucleus. T half and T average will remain constant for a given element. For uranium, T half, T average will remain same no matter how many nuclei you take in your sample. Now let us try to solve a question based on half-life. Very easy question. What is the question? That tritium has a half-life of 12.5 years. What fraction of tritium remains unchanged after 25 years? Now there are two ways to solve this question. Either you can put the values in your equation, or if you observe, 25 years is nothing but 12.5 multiplied by 2. See, let us say initially there were n number of nuclei. Then after 12.5 years, how many nuclei will be left? After 12.5 years, n by 2 nuclei will be left. Half of this. Again after 12.5 years, how many nuclei will be left? Half of, not this, half of this. So, n naught by 4. So, how much time have passed from here? 12.5, 12.5, that is 25. So, n naught by 4. So, what you can do is that what fraction will be left is n naught by 4. You can also remember this as a very easy formula, that let us say if I ask after 10 half-life, what fraction of nuclei will be left? So you can simply say n naught divided by 2 to the power small n, where n is the how many half-lives, how many half-lives have passed. So in this case, how many half-lives have passed? 25 years. How many half-lives? 2 half-lives. So n naught divided by 2 to the power 2, which is 4. So n naught by 4. If I ask after 5 half-lives, which is 12.5 into 5, that is 62.5 years. So what will be the fraction of nuclei left after 62.5 years? then you can simply say, sir, n naught divided by 2 to the power 5, which is 32. So n naught by 32 nuclei will be left. So if you want, you can remember this. It might be handy in the exam. Otherwise, no problem. You can simply do. Another way of doing this is n equals n naught e to the power minus lambda times t. Now you can find lambda through half-life. Half-life is what? ln 2 by lambda. You find lambda, you put lambda here, you put t here, you will get value of n. So that is the long way, this is the short way, and this is the shortest way. So you can use any one of them. Now let us solve another question. What is that? A sample decays for a time equal to its mean life. So there is a radioactive sample, and how much time have passed equal to mean life or average life. What is T average? 1 by lambda. Find the fraction of nuclei that have decayed. Now, so first let us say initially there were n naught number of nuclei. Okay. Now, how many nuclei will be left? So n naught into e to the power minus lambda times t. T is the time which have passed. And how much time have passed? Equal to mean life, not means life, mean life. Now what is mean life? 1 by lambda. So here in place of t I can write 1 by lambda. So number of nuclei left is nothing but this. So n equals n naught e to the power lambda lambda cancel minus 1. So e to the power minus 1 is nothing but divided by e. Now, so this is the number of nuclei left. Then how many nuclei have decayed? So delta n will be equal to initial number of nuclei minus number of nuclei which are left. So delta n will be n naught minus n, which will be how much? N naught will be common, 1 minus 1 by e. And what they are asking? Find the fraction of nuclei that have decayed. And fraction you take corresponding to what? Corresponding to original number, initial number. So you will say delta n divided by n naught. That will be your fraction which have decayed. So which will be equal to n naught divided by n naught will be cancelled out, 1 minus 1 by e. So this is the fraction of nuclei that have decayed during what time? During mean life of that sample. Now remember, mean life is not the property of sample. Mean life is the property of element because it is 1 by lambda. And lambda is the property of element. So this was your law of radioactive decay. In this lecture, we have talked about what is radioactive decay, what are the types of radioactive decay, what are the process through which those decays take place, and we also talked about law of radioactive decay, how you can predict that how many nuclei will decay in what amount of time. In the next lecture, we will talk about how we can use these reactions, how we can use the decay of a radioactive element to our benefit. That we will talk about in the next lecture. Until then, keep revising and keep solving as many questions as you can from the law of radioactive decay concept.